On the show with us is Eylon Levy, former Israeli government spokesperson. Thank you, Eylon, for joining us. Let me begin by asking you, the release of those hostages and those heartwarming visuals on screens, does that really bring closure to the Israeli people after 2 years of a very bitterly fought war?
Yeah, it is a historic day in Israel. In the streets, scenes of euphoria. Israelis are delighted that the last living hostages are finally free. People have been crying, seeing photos of hostages. We have been praying to get out of Gaza, reunited with their families. Some of them are in a very difficult condition. One came back partially blind, but they're reunited with their families. The challenging thing now is that Hamas is not releasing all of the bodies of the hostages it murdered in captivity. 28 hostages were murdered in captivity, and Hamas is holding onto their bodies. Hamas is now claiming it can't find those bodies. The families are saying that's nonsense. They know exactly where the bodies are. They're trying to hold onto them as bargaining chips. And Israel should suspend the implementation of the rest of the agreement until all the hostages are home. And that is an important demand from the hostages' families. They are going to keep up their struggle until all the hostages are home, the living and the dead, because the families of the hostages who were murdered in captivity, they have a right to bury their loved ones, and they deserve to get closure too.
All right. I would like to ask you about the remaining 28 hostages who are presumed dead. Today, the IDF has said that 4 bodies are set to be released. What's going to be the timeline for the release of those 28 missing hostages? This is going to be a difficult operation, according to you. How do you feel this is going to be carried out in the next few weeks?
Hamas needs to free all of the bodies immediately and unconditionally. That is part of the agreement. And the hostage families expect that Hamas is going to pretend that it doesn't know where some of the bodies are. Because Hamas is a cruel and barbarian terrorist organization. Let's remember who we're dealing with. We're dealing with the bloodthirsty terrorist army that abducted people from their beds, that killed them, that took their bodies, that sent back bodies last time in public ceremonies where they invited people to celebrate and sent them back in locked coffins. We know we're dealing with an enemy that is pure evil and that is going to try to hold on to leverage. So there is a part of the agreement, there will be a joint international task force that will help to locate the bodies. But the first thing is Hamas has to give back all of the bodies in its possession, and it's not doing that. That is a violation of the agreement, and it must comply.
Right. I would also like to ask you, what is now the road ahead in terms of bringing peace? Let's begin with what's going to happen in Gaza. How is the situation different this time around? About not allowing Hamas to regroup, about making sure that there is a security perimeter. What's different and what's going to happen now in the next few weeks, according to you, which will be critical for sustained peace in the region?
Yeah, the October 7th war is over. Israel won this war that Hamas and the other Iranian proxy armies declared nearly 2 years ago. But the path for lasting peace is the full implementation of the Trump plan. What does that mean? Hamas must be disarmed, the Gaza Strip must be demilitarized, and the population must be de-radicalized. If that does not happen, then we know that the next war is only a matter of time, and we don't want a next war. Now, Hamas, the first thing it did after the October 7th massacre was to threaten to do it again and again until Israel is destroyed. And Israel is now giving a chance for a diplomatic option to destroy Hamas's tunnels, to destroy Hamas's remaining missiles so that it can never invade again, can never launch barbaric atrocities like it did on October 7th, and can never drag the region into war ever again. So there now needs to be international action together with Israel to dismantle Hamas's tunnels, to demilitarize the Gaza Strip, because we want this to be the last Gaza war.
Right. What do we see in terms of the beginning of the establishment of an interim security force and a political structure for Gaza? At what stage, Eylon, do you think that will begin?
Well, an interim security force is one of the things that President Trump is going to be discussing with world leaders in Sharm el-Sheikh, but it's important that any peacekeeping force actually have teeth, because in West Asia, peacekeeping forces have been useless. Look at Lebanon. UNIFIL, a UN peacekeeping force. Hezbollah, Iran's proxy army, built a huge terrorist army right underneath their noses. So whatever stabilization force is built for the Gaza Strip needs to have real power to challenge Hamas. Because let's make no mistake, the Hamas regime survived this war. Hamas is still in power in half of Gaza. It's launching a brutal crackdown on the opposition and executing people in the streets in Gaza. Part of the deal that Israel is going to stop fighting Hamas is that the international community is going to have to put up a force that is going to disarm Hamas itself. But that needs to happen one way or another. That deal needs to be, President Trump's plan needs to be implemented. Because if it is not, and if Hamas rebuild its military machine, it's going to drag us into another war. And nobody wants that. Hamas is now totally isolated on the world stage. And President Trump's plan now needs to be implemented in full.
You know, Eylon, just to come back to the humanitarian side of it, and we're putting out those pictures from Israel about the release of those hostages. Could you give us a sense of what's been the condition of those hostages, some of the messages that they've released to their family members, their ordeal over the last 2 years?
Yeah, the hostages have been through absolute hell. Many of them haven't seen sunlight in hundreds of days because they were held in underground tunnels. They didn't have light. They didn't have fresh air. They didn't have food. We saw hostages coming back who had lost a lot of weight. One of the hostages, Eylon Levy, has lost sight in his right eye. He's gone blind because 2 years ago, Hamas death squads threw a grenade into a bomb shelter where he was hiding, and he got shrapnel in his eye. He has a long period of recovery. We know of other hostages who were tortured. I mean, they were connected to car batteries and electrocuted. So they're going to have a very long process of physical recovery ahead of them. But Israelis are delighted. At least they are alive. At least they are in the hands of their families. And the long road of physical and emotional recovery begins now.
All right, long road for physical, emotional and mental recovery. And of course, it will take time for that board of peace to be established and a new political structure for Gaza to come up as well. Thanks, Eylon, for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. That's all we have time for here on Global Lens on CNBC TV 18 Prime. Goodbye and thanks for watching.